What's going on, guys? It's Justin here with Summit Racing, and we're bringing you guys another live stream, and we have some extra fun guests today. We have the guys from Engine Power over at PowerNation, and we have Frankie Forman and Pat Topolinski with us. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us today. And I can't wait to talk about some fun stuff today.
Well, we're really happy to be here, and if it's something that we love talking about is engines. So, I think we're fun.
I mean, it might have been a little bit of a stretch, but behind the scenes, when the camera's off, I think we're a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun here, and like Pat said, talking about engines and building engines is literally our favorite thing. So this is right up our wheelhouse.
Same. I feel the exact same way. I always try to consider myself a jack of all trades, but when it comes to I can build engines and transmissions all day, but if you ask me to paint something or do some body work, that's a little bit above me, and my daily drivers are big testaments to that.
I understood. I'm a form follows function type of guy. So as if it works, that's one thing, but aesthetically, that takes a little bit more work.
So you wouldn't know what to do with a sanding block if you handed it to him.
I identify with that very, very much. So you guys have been doing a lot of cool stuff in, the current season you're in. And actually you've built something really cool over the last episode just came out. You guys built a kind of a big inch Frankenstein small block LS deal for the guys over at Carcass for their road racing Camaro. And I'm super excited to talk about it. So let's get into this engine and kind of, what it all entails, because it makes you scratch your head a little bit when you're talking about putting LS heads on top of a small block Chevy.
Yeah, so it's the guys in Carcass. They said they're building a road race Camaro, so they wanted a unique power plant, something that was a little bit different. Obviously we've all seen LS engines making insane amount of power, NA and with power adders and stuff. But what we started with to make it a little bit different is a World Products Motown LS block. So it's a hybrid block made by World Products. And it, like you said, it uses a small block Chevy bottom end, and then it allows LS induction to be bolted to it. So it's a very unique block. It looks a little bit different. Sometimes when you look at it, you don't realize what you're looking at until you start looking closely. But it is, like I said, it uses a small block Chevy crank, small block Chevy rods, has a 9,240 deck height though, and has LS heads. So this is kind of the process of us building it. And this is, these are clips from the show. So no matter whether it's a race engine or a regular engine, they all get the same attention to detail. So we've gone through and, ported the block, ported all the oil galleries in the block. We've deburred it. And obviously, just like everything, when we go through assembly, we're measuring anything we can, whether it's surface finish or bearing clearances. And all that happens a lot of times off camera before anybody even sees it, just to make sure that when we shoot the show, things go smoothly.
We have a large amount of data on this stuff, even though we have to condense a whole lot of engine building into a very short amount of time for what we do. So like this particular one, like Frankie says, we don't treat an engine if it's for a daily driver, if it's an OEM rebuild, or this particular one, which is a high-end race engine, we don't treat them any different. The measurements are the same. The data logging is the same. Everything that we do is purpose-built. We don't arbitrarily do things and hope they work. Everything is designed for a specific purpose. This particular engine, even though it's got a lot of racy parts that can cross over from a drag race to a road race to a hot street car or whatever, all these parts are designed to make a specific power level for a specific amount of time and have a calculated degree of durability and longevity.
Yeah, so that's really what sets this one apart from, if you were building a standard LS or small block Chevy is we used a lot of really high quality parts, and because it's a unique application, there's a few very unique parts that go with it, like that valley cover there is unique to the block. It comes from World Products because it actually has to account for the taller deck height, so the heads bolt to it. Some of the stuff is very, standard, like the headers, the induction package from LME. That's a standard induction package. There's nothing, unique about it for the engine, but it's an extremely high flowing induction package that they've proven time and time again makes huge power. The camshaft was custom because that's kind of where the two worlds meet inside the block, as it uses 55 millimeter journals. It's raised 134 thousandths in the block, and it uses a small block Chevy timing gear on the front, a small block Chevy distributor gear on the rear, but it's an LS firing order with LS lobe spacing to match the heads. And because we used a 904 lifter, it's got an 800, it's got lobe size for an 800 roller wheel diameter. So that's one of those really unique pieces that Comp made for us. And that was a huge part of the build.
This engine is also a dry sump engine. You saw the dry sump pump getting bolted on. There's no reason that a wet sump couldn't possibly work for something like this, but because of the power and the RPM that the engine's designed to make, dry sump was a better choice. And on this one, if you're not going to cut any corners when you have something that's going to be, a high durability, high service life, high amount of cycle time race engine. Yep. You want this thing to be as bulletproof as you can get it. So we went the extra mile on a lot of this stuff. And it's a very expensive engine. The old adage, you get what you pay for, because this thing is an anvil, and we're very, very proud of this engine.
Yeah, just kind of watching with the build list and watching you guys put this thing together, it just puts a big old rowdy smile on my face. Anytime there's a dry, you're getting a crank trigger and a dry sump out, it's going to be a party. And that's kind of like with the LS thing, with the, LS swap the world is kind of the common hashtag nowadays. But as you kind of touched in the video, with the small block bottom end, you're getting a half-speed oil pump, which is great for high RPM application. Versus the LS, we love that one-to-one oil pump on the front. It works fantastically, but there's a point where the thing wants to oil too good, and you get some cavitation issues in those high RPM applications. So, yeah, seeing a dry sump and just a total race-built, ready-to-party motor, just that's the kind of stuff I like. It's when you're building stuff to set it on kill, it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, no, and this one, I said this was a ton of fun for us because we don't get to build a lot of race engines here because they are granted very expensive. And we do a little bit of everything. Like you're talking about, we've done a ton of stuff this season. We like this race engine that, it's very high end. It's built to be extremely durable for a long period of time. But we've also done some budgety stuff. Like we turboed a bone stock 460 big block Ford and made over 700 pound-feet with it. And that's something that, only took a couple of grand worth of turbo parts from Summit. And so we try and do a little bit of everything to catch a wide audience because everybody has different budgets. Everybody has different interests. So we do our best to do interesting stuff across the board.
And we try to show the process along the way. What people may or may not know, 80% of the work we do here is off camera. We mentioned that earlier. So all the things that go into machining and fitting and all that stuff, we have a very good capability in here in our shop. We have a nice mill. We have a nice lathe. We are able to balance our own crankshafts here. We hone our blocks here in-house. And obviously, from a testing standpoint, we have an engine dyno and a chassis dyno. So we're a very well-equipped shop, but there's no ninja crews that come in and do any of the work. Frankie and I, we're the ones that are responsible for all of this. We are the technical producers of the show, for one thing, but on the other side of that, there's nobody that determines anything for us. We are the ones that come up with all the combinations, all of the parts for it. We pick out all our parts from the oil pan bolts to the induction side and everything in between. So on this race engine, this was something that was very, very exciting for us. And we've done a few of them in the past, and they've all worked out really, really well. So anytime we jump at the chance to be able to do this. So when this project came down the pike, we were very, very excited about it. And the end result is the engine did exactly what it was supposed to. And we actually have dynoed it, and it does make very, very good power. We can't say what it makes because that's why you have to watch our show, because that's the big reveal. But it did make our required power numbers, and it did it at a very high RPM. We did actually turn at 8,000 RPM, and just because that's what it's designed to do. So that's going to be if you're not going to want to miss this show, because this one's going to be a fantastic one to watch and learn and show what it takes to put one of these things together that not only makes the power you want, but do the things you want as far as from a longevity and a durability standpoint.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see how this shakes out. One of my favorite things I think you guys did this season was the Leaning and Tower of Power. Everybody loves
the slant. Yeah.
Like, I've seen them things run with holes in the sides of them, and you're just wondering, like, where did that rod and piston go? And the thing's just running a little rough. But we've had a couple people comment here in a minute. Jim, I love these guys' show too. I always learn something as well. And Russell, thank you for tuning in. So, but yeah, no, you guys do all sorts of cool stuff, and it's the mild to wild. I think what we all appreciate. That's and not everybody has a crazy budget, and that's kind of cool about small block. I mean, any of these applications, and kind of like a lot of the Summit parts we carry, is you can make something run healthy doing some DIY stuff and spending not a whole lot of dollars. I think that's what's super appealing about the LS application is a camshaft, a couple gaskets, a set of junkyard heads, and you bolt that stuff on a 6-liter, and it's going to make 400 horsepower. And everybody's like, oh, 400 horsepower isn't a lot. You'd be, once you get it and drive something with some ponies and it makes a little bit of stink, it's pretty impressive. It'll put you back in the seat. It's not jumping Coke cans and you can't grab $20 bills off the dash. But
back in the day. Yeah. People, I think, people get a little bit of jaded on horsepower numbers nowadays because of how good things are and how easy it is to make power. It's like only 400. I'm like, I'm going to date the hell out of myself right here. But back in my day, if you had a 400 horse engine in a light car, that was a fast car, right? Now, I know pickup trucks and delivery vans, and they all make 400, 500 horse now. So people get a little bit, if something doesn't make 1,000, people say, oh, that engine, there must be something wrong with it. Well, it's a different philosophy, from where I standpoint, not from Frankie's standpoint. No, Frankie's birthday was not just like 2 days ago. So
happy birthday, Frankie!
Thank you.
Appreciate it. He is almost as old as my Leatherman.
Almost, yeah. Pat's got boots and all kinds of stuff.
My hunting boots are older than Frankie. My baseball glove, I can go on. But from a younger demographic standpoint, the parts are so good now, and stuff that you can literally just buy out of the catalog. You can thumb through Summit's catalog and say, look, we can buy a whole lot of good stuff, literally bolted together because it's so well made, so well engineered, and it's available. People can make really, really good power, right out of from ordering stuff online or whatever. So it's pretty interesting.
And that's really credit to companies like Summit, because a lot of companies have put in the time to have better materials, better machining processes to make sure that their parts are coming out at a standard that probably 20 or 25 years ago wasn't there across the board like it is now. Like your guys' Pro LS line, we've used that a ton, and that's a really affordable line that the parts are extremely high quality, and we've used them to make great power on a bunch of different builds.
That's pro quality stuff. I say good pistons, good rods, good cranks. That's it's easy to make power with that stuff. Not only to make power, the big thing, I like to call it strong but not long. You can make almost anything make power, but you don't want the thing to turn into a sparkler after one full power hit. So having good parts. And being able to source them and have them be affordable, and not only be affordable, but be able to hold up to the abuse you're putting to them, it says something about what you guys are doing there.
Yeah, and that's I do love that testament, how you're just like, something can make big power, but the key is for how long. I'm a advocate of spraying the house down and, nitrosing the rods out of things.
Oh boy.
It's easy to make 1,000 horsepower with, they have that, the sloppy style building of LSs, and that, that market has took off, where don't look at the cam bearings, put a giant cam in it, gap the factory rings. Like it works. You can make 1,000 horsepower, but it's how many times can you make 1,000 horsepower? And it gets very, very old swapping a motor out every, 2 or 3 weeks or doing that. So we've had a couple more questions pop up while we've been just, cutting it up here, guys. David Scholl is asking, is there a total parts list for this, kind of Franken? I don't want to call it a Franken Chevy, but it's kind of the best of both worlds.
I keep calling it a hybrid, and it usually makes people look weird because they're like, you guys are building a hybrid? I'm like, well, it's kind of, but we have a full parts list. We're, like Pat said, we document our builds very well. So I'm sure at some point, if you guys don't know already, that usually when we put together a solid combination, Summit will actually take that combination and turn it into one part number. And you can find it on their website. If you just look up engine power, you can find a bunch of the builds that we've done. So I'm sure at some point they'll take all the parts and put them together as a combo if you're looking to build something like this.
Yeah, we also had another comment from James. Have you guys ever considered building like a boxer engine? Maybe touching into the JDM world a little bit.
We consider everything. If it burns gasoline, we love it, right? So
that is the attitude I love, Pat.
Well, it's an engine. There's this stuff is it's all similar in its function. It all does the same thing. They all they have the same common components. So wherever the base engine comes from, to us, it doesn't matter because everything can be improved on.
Yep.
And
it's all about cylinder pressure and horsepower.
It's all about cylinder pressure, how you're making cylinder pressure. So that being said, as long as we can get parts for things and we have some sort of vision of what this thing is supposed to do, absolutely, we don't consider anything off limits per se.
Ooh, I love this one that just popped up from Randall. Would you guys ever consider a 96 LT1 max build? And my favorite part about LT1 was that was the first time I'd ever seen like an aluminum set of cylinder heads on a factory motor, and it was like NASA came to town. This is, a cylinder. I think that's kind of where the LS really benefits, and it's a really stout bottom end, but it's above the deck where the thing shines. Like it's a good quality aluminum cylinder head right out of the box. Like, kind of you had dated yourself a little bit, Pat, and said, if you had a 400 horsepower car, or even like you say the 90s to early 2000s, if you had something that you could drive on the street and it would run 10s, you could go. That was a fast car.
That was a very fast car. Yeah.
Now you have these drag and drive guys that drive things on the road that run like an 8-second car is a quick car, and it's wild how far it's progressed.
Yeah, no, it is insane, and it's because of the stuff that you can get nowadays, right? It's way easier to do stuff, so much better in almost every aspect, from the material quality to the machining accuracy. So that's what does it.
Yeah.
I know one of the things I also loved about this, I love this episode that you guys did on the 440, your beginning episode. It's weird to say a 440 cubic inch small Chevy, and we're not, we're, usually when we're talking 440s, we're talking about tall deck Mopars, but that's not the case today. So, but Frankie taught me when he was throwing bob weights around, balancing that thing, about how key, like it's wild that you can go from 300 pounds of, pressure on what it's going to be on a rod journal, and the machine can simulate that down to 12 by balancing it and not adding, you didn't add any weight. There's not a bunch of molly slung in that crank to get it right or anything. The thing was just needed massaged a little bit for your application.
Yeah, and having that crankshaft balancer is one of the coolest things that happened to us in the last couple of years. Huge shout out to Randy Neal at CWT for helping us get set up with that and helping us figure out how to run his machine stuff. It's extremely intuitive and very easy to run. And that's one of my favorite features about the machine, is that it will calculate the force for you. And that kind of ties into like something that we push all the time or say all the time, is that, nothing we do is magic or rocket science. It's all physics and math. It's a little bit of science, but it's physics and math and science. And there's nothing that is voodoo about anything that we do. It's just, understanding how things work and understanding how they affect other parts of the engine. And having that and being able to show that to our viewers, I think is a huge, huge bonus, because everybody knows that, if you change pistons, you got to have your crank balance. But when we can show balancing, we can show people what happens. What do you need to take to the machine shop? What happens when you drop it off? And that kind of stuff, I think, is really, really beneficial for our viewers.
What it does is it puts forces on the inside of the engine into perspective, right? And when you can visualize, what happens when something's spinning around, and the only way that can really do it is calculating it by pounds of force. That puts it really into, oh my God, is something pushing and pulling, several hundred pounds or under 10 pounds. That makes it, that shows you why parts wear out, why you need to do things like this. Balance is it's something that it's a privilege to have that in-house. And one thing, it shortens up our stuff, because we have a great machine shop we work with here in Nashville, Shacklet Auto Machine. They do a lot of great work for us when we can't do it, but we brought that in-house, the balancing part, because it speeds up. We can, if we don't have to take it out of the building, it speeds up everything, right? And that's when we have a lathe and a mill. Not only are we doing parts for ourselves, we build a lot of stuff for the other three shows, Music City, Detroit Muscle, and Carcass. At any given point during the week, we are machining some stuff for them, or fixing something, helping them out, just to keep everybody rolling. So,
yeah, and being able to do that stuff in house is really, it's taking stuff to the machine shop. I always compare to, we joke around, it's sending something to paint jail.
Kind of.
you can drop, we've all been there where we dropped our block and our crank, a bunch of stuff off the machine shop, and then you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs, foaming at the mouth, just waiting for the phone to ring. You're like, I'll be there in 15 minutes when they call.
Yeah. Well, it's because every machine shop in the world is super busy with work. That means a lot of people are working on a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah. I say every machine shop we've been to in the last, I don't even know, 4 or 5 years is full to the hilt with, jobs that they need to do.
Yeah.
And they're always looking for people to hire because they can't get enough help, And so that's this is
a great industry.
It's insane how, I guess, with the pandemic and everything, everybody thought things were going to die down. In reality, it ramped up and it hasn't stopped since.
That's when we like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what it's good to see. I love to see people buying parts, building motors. It just lets you know that this industry is alive, fruitful, and we're here to stay. So as kind of Frankie and Pat said, if you guys, any of you youth are watching and you ever decide I highly recommend coming into this field, becoming an engine builder, a machinist. It's a very rewarding career. And, if you're good at math, it's a good path to follow. It's a lot of fun.
There's two things that don't lie: math and physics.
Yep.
They'll always tell you the truth. So, like everything we do, the machinery we work on, everything's a good soldier, right? It'll do exactly what you tell it to do, whether you tell it to do something right or you tell it to do something wrong. It's going to do exactly what you tell it. So education and testing and things like that, very, very important in our industry. And this industry needs fresh people because we all want to continue what we do. This is our fun, right? So this is what we do. It's a blessing that our hobby is our career.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So
yes, I mean my goal one day is to be as old as Ed Escuderian and watching him build small block Chevys.
Yeah.
That's what, as a, me and Frankie are on the younger side, Pat, no offense, but I am still.
See that bus coming when he threw you under it? Dang.
And, everybody thinks like, you're like, oh, you're an LS guy. You're on the edge. I'm like, no, small block for life, dollar per horsepower. You cannot, the small block still reigns supreme.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. No, with that many made, there's no way it can't be. You know what I'm saying? And then just because of what it is, whatever you apply to that applies to all other engines. So I don't care if it's a 2-cylinder, a 12-cylinder. I don't care what it is. Anything that you can learn say you want to build your first engine, just want to build a conventional Gen 1 small block Chevy. Everything that you learn doing that will translate into anything else that you build because it's all about attention to detail.
Yep.
It's about measurement. It's about data collection, and it's about picking the right things for the right application. So.
Yeah, everything is a built, I love that. And then the aspect of it, everything's it's an application. You need to build a recipe. It's like building a sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
You don't start with the meat. You got to put the bread down first and go, and then cap the whole thing out. And that's the other thing is kind of investing. If you decide you want to be an engine builder and do your stuff in house, your own stuff in your garage, you invest a little bit of money in some tools.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big advocate of hitting auctions and stuff like that to find some of these older, not everybody can go out and dump a couple $1,000s on precision measurement tools.
Yeah.
But if you're smart and you buy what you need right now, like a good dial bore gauge and some other odds and ends like that, you can do some real crazy stuff with not a whole lot of tools.
Oh yeah, 100%. And we tell people that all the time. We're really, really blessed to have a ton of really great equipment that allows us to do what we do. And all it really does is allow us to do it more efficiently. But you can do the same stuff with things that are a lot less harder on your wallet and your budget,
right.
And just as like a story, like the first engine I ever built, I didn't have a lot of tools. So like I didn't have a ring compressor. So I used a piece of 4-inch sewer and drain PVC and turned it into a ring compressor and things like that, where as long as you're doing it the right way, I guess is the term I'm looking for. But as long as you're paying attention, you understand what you're doing, you can do it the correct way, even if you don't have, necessarily the most expensive equipment in the world.
Right.
Yeah. It's all, my grandfather would always say, it's not the tools don't make the mechanic makes the tools. and
Good
the
point.
aspect that
Yeah.
you can have a giant box full of crazy stuff, and if you don't know how to use it, you're just as dead. You're just as dead in the water as you were before.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was actually going to be one of my questions, guys. Is I'll start with Frankie. What was the first motor that you put together?
Let's think. I think technically it was an inline six Caterpillar engine. I actually took a diesel vocational class in high school, and as part of the class, we actually tore down and rebuilt a couple of Cat engines, and then we had a water brake dyno set up that bolted to the back of the engine, so we dynoed them in class and stuff. And that was actually that would have been the first engine that I ever rebuilt ever. And then the first one I did for myself was a standard 350 Chevy I built for my car. Did it in the garage at nights, and just tinkered away at it for a couple of weeks, and then ended up swapping it into my car. But technically, yeah, I guess it was a diesel. He's gonna hate me for that, but
the platform really doesn't matter. It's because again, it's all the same stuff. And I was sitting there while you're talking. I'm like, what was my first engine?
This was much farther back.
We're going back to the early '80s, right? And I worked on some small engine stuff. Actually, first automotive engine. Well, it wasn't even an automotive engine. It'd be an 8N Ford tractor. We had some of those when I was a kid, and 8N Ford. That's all it is. That's a half a flathead, Ford with a split valve guide and all kinds of goofy stuff that's associated with it. And then it graduated finally to automotive applications. A lot of Chevys and Fords, that's for sure. Small block. I built an engine for my car. I had an 82 Fairmont, back in the day. And back in 1989, that was a 351 Windsor car. And that car would run 1180s, back in 1989. It was a street car. And back then, again, that was a barely 400 horse car. That was, it was fast, but that's how I got into this. My first experience with hot rodding is my cousin Mark, who is a little older than I am. He has a 55 Chevy that he bought in 1970, and he still has the car today. And I rode in that car when I was 8 years old, when you could still get high test gasoline out of the pump at a Sunoco station. Went for a ride. This is a 427 dual quad, Muncie transmission, 55 Chevy. And after that, there was nothing I wanted to do more than build engines.
Yes, that's I have a very kind of similar story. The first fast car I ever rode in was a solid lifter DZ 302 Camaro, 4-speed car.
That's cool.
I was a little kid, and I was hooked. There was nothing quite like that. Like when you have a small Chevy that turns 8,500 RPMs, and you can I always think when I think of rowdy 4-speed like gear grabbing action, I think of the Grumpy Jenkins video. It's kind of like from the dude that's grabbing the shit, just commanding it.
Yeah.
But
awesome.
Very similar kind of. I'm both a similar story kind of to you guys. I took a vocational ag class at our at my local career center down where I grew up in Wayne County, Ohio. And it was the first like things, I'd like dabble. My dad's kind of a hot rodder engine guy, so I'd like kind of dabble with that stuff growing up. But it was like the first full potatoes engine build I ever did by myself was a tractor motor too. And then some air cooled Volkswagen stuff, and then small Chevys, big, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And I just same deal. I just said like I picked, this is the industry I wanted to be in. Like I love things that make noise. It doesn't matter what it is. It's I spent a lot of my youth taking things apart that did make noise, and then they no longer made noise after I was done with it.
Yeah, you have to learn somehow.
That's how you learn.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's awesome.
Yes, I cost my parents a whole lot of lawnmowers and stuff growing up.
Wow.
But it was a good time.
Worth it. Worth it. That's what I say.
So you had a that was kind of I like to roll and kind of see first car, first hot rod. So you said you were a Fairmont guy, Pat. What about so you built, what kind of car do you have, Frankie, that you built a small block for, or what kind of car did you have?
I did have it. I ended up selling it, but my first car was a 79 Firebird Esprit, the base model with the V6 in it, which I actually bought it with the V6. Car was banana yellow. not great. Tan interior.
I love a good Thunder Chicken, man.
Yeah, that was its nickname for a while for sure. And yeah, overpaid for the car, but I was in love with it, And this was right about when I started realizing I wanted to get into cars. Both my parents are plumbers, so I had no connection to cars or automotive at all until I just decided that that's what I wanted to do. But I bought the car, painted it red, had it painted red because I did not know anything about paint. I still don't know anything about paint, but painted it red, and then drove it for a while on the V6, and I was gathering parts for the 350 that I built. And like I said, this was basically the first automotive engine that I ever built. So it took a little bit longer than it should have, but it was just a mild build. It was stock head 350. Just mostly built it to have more power than the V6, and I wanted good fuel mileage, so I 700 R4 swapped the car. And I actually finished it right before I went to college, and then ended up driving it the entire time I was in college. I used to drive it back and forth from Maryland to Ohio, and drive from Ohio to Indiana, Illinois, North Carolina, wherever I had to go. It was my daily driver. And people used to ask me, like, get around like October, November, they'd be like, when are you going to put your car away for the winter? And I'd tell them, like, it doesn't go away because it's the only car I have. It's my daily. So, but yeah, it wasn't anything crazy as engines go. It was just a mild build. I think it made just over 300 at the crank, but it got like 22 miles a gallon going across Ohio and Indiana and stuff. So it was perfect for what it was at the time. But I ended up selling the car right before I came here, actually. But that was a huge learning experience for me. It's just, getting my feet wet in the industry and figuring out stuff on that car as I learned and stuff. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's I love stuff like that. There's nothing quite like hot rodding your daily, or you drive something that's a little bit questionable and it's 3:30 in the morning and you're working on it the night before and you're like, I have to drive this to work or school tomorrow. Like, what are we doing? But yeah, and you're a UNOH guy too, Frankie, which is super cool. That is, any of you, again, youth that are interested in, maybe getting into this industry or even making a career change or, furthering yourself, UNOH is always a great option. It is the high performance school for kind of this industry.
Yeah. I can't say enough good things about UNOH, and anybody who's interested, or maybe even interested in getting in this industry, it doesn't matter what you think you're interested in, whether it's drag racing or drifting or Monster Jam or NHRA. It doesn't matter. Definitely recommend you go check out the school, go take a tour. Everyone there is always extremely, extremely helpful and happy to see you. And the instructors have a ton of knowledge, and there's a ton of opportunity that you can get just by going. So
yeah. So
Forman said that's a perfect car.
I don't know who that is.
Who's that?
I don't know who that is. That's my mom.
That's Frankie's mom.
She actually drove the car back when I bought it. When I bought it, I was too young to drive. I was like 14 at the time. So she actually drove the car back on it. She drove it on its first drive when we bought it.
That was 10 years ago.
Hello, Mama Forman, and thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. We actually had a fun question come across. My dad does the same. I love my dad. He is, he's my biggest hero. The dude's kind of, guided me through some of the wild things I like to do. But he calls every time a new video comes out. He calls me and he's like, I watched your new video, and that's the whole conversation.
That's cool.
Just to let you know.
Thanks, Dad. I appreciate it. That is very fun. I really appreciate that, Frankie. Now, we had a question come up. Have you guys ever had like a catastrophic failure on the dyno since you've been on engine power?
Thank goodness, no.
Yeah.
Now, everything has problems, and there's things that have had problems that are. It's typically. To tell you the truth, every time we put some sort of junkyard engine on the dyno, we have some sort of problem. And that's one of those things where, it's very popular to take something right out of the junkyard, hose it off, put a couple of racy parts on it, and then put it in and hope for the best. But what we always try to stress is that is never a good idea. We call it strong but not long. It's like working on a disposable lighter. It's at some point it's gonna fail. So we haven't had anything like shoot out of the bottom, or we've broken valve springs. We've had one time we had an oil pump pickup come off.
Yeah. We've had some. I mean, because part of our job is building engines. Right. As an engine builder, you do everything in your power to make sure that nothing like that happens. Right. And that's what we stress people all the time is, when you're doing this, you check as much as you can because you're trying to eliminate variables. So when you get to the dyno or when it gets in the vehicle, you don't have those problems. And having an engine on the dyno is a huge benefit, because as a tool, it's awesome for being able to break in engines, run in engines, stick junkyard engines on there and make sure they're tip top before we try and put them in a car. But we never had anything, like catastrophic like that. And so we do our best to avoid those things. And we're
humans working on machines.
Yeah.
So you couldn't get anything that is more set up to have a problem, right? And like Frankie was saying, we are not the send it and hope for the best type of people. We do everything that we can to do it right the first time. And a lot of people, they would like to, because I'm the same way. I want to get something going, but we're never going to forego something that's supposed to be checked or supposed to be done before we actually send it and hope it runs. If it's to the point where it's hit the dyno and we've built it, we know what it's supposed to do and what's going to happen. And again, things will happen inevitably, but so far so good. And one of the questions that we always get as well is, why don't we push engines until they explode? Well, why would you do that? It's the same thing as I go stick my hand in the door jamb and slam it. I know what's going to happen when that happens, right?
Yeah.
And so there's if something's purpose built, we're not doing R&D here. We don't have a racing program. We don't have a budget to have a bunch of consumable parts. We're doing this because we want reliable combinations that someone can watch us put together the same thing and have the same result, have it last, have it make power, and for whatever the application. So we are not of the school of hope for the best and not check stuff. You always have time to do it over, but you never have time to do it right the first time. We try that. We try to do it right the first time, and that's just the mindset of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I as I've gotten older, I've developed that mindset as well. Like I said, there's no fun. I like making, raw, rowdy horsepower, but I don't like, breaking a bunch of parts gets expensive. Like,
it sure does.
Yeah.
One of the first motors I ever put together, the thing was sitting there running and then slowly lost oil pressure and then locked up. And it was just like, I was already eating ramen noodles. Like I'd spent every available dollar that I had to put this thing together.
Painful.
And it's just it's a simple clear, the kind of, they always joke. And one of the guys here at Summit always says, if you build something loose, only you'll know. If you build something tight, everybody's going to know. And you don't want to be that. Have you guys ever seen that guy at the track that, goes to make his first pass? It's like 6 o'clock at night and the dude makes it 3/4 of the way down the track and the bottom end just comes out and just leaves everything on the track. You don't want to be that guy, because I hate to break it to you, nobody likes that guy at the track. People say mean things about him.
Well, and just even for us, just seeing something like that happen, it makes you sick to your stomach.
It hurts my inside.
Yeah. And so thinking, like Pat said, why would you do that? It's that it's just the point of if we did that, it would make you want to throw up, to watch something that you've spent all this time and all this energy and all this money to build, to have it run and do very specific thing, and you start pushing it past that, you're just asking for problems and asking, like you said, to spend a ton of money.
Yeah, if you've spent your hard-earned money on something, you don't want to just keep throwing money down a hole, which we do that anyway, because that's what hot rodding and projects are. It's like a big money sponge, right? You throw money that sucks it all in, right? But which is cool, because in the end, that's the fun of it, right? But for us, breaking stuff is not fun whatsoever. So we do our best to avoid that at all costs, and to do stuff that's engineered to the point where it's going to work. The limitations of your parts, the limitations of everything that's in the engine, because I know the limitations of my wallet, and we don't want to exceed those either, right? So.
Yeah.
I'm trying over here to eat filet mignon on a ground beef budget.
Yeah. Now, as we always talk about it, there's a triangle of engine building.
Yep.
And you can have power, reliability, or cheap. Yeah. And you can only have two. You can't have all three. You can only have two. So you have to pick what you want. And for us, and we talked about this before on the show, we choose to have powerful and reliable.
Yep.
Not, we'd rather have reliability over maybe saving some money or not spending any money on it, and just, trying to push it to its limits.
Right.
Yeah, and like I said, it's good to have realistic horsepower goals. Like I said, the LS thing is fantastic, and I beat on the LS drum all the time. It's a great application. You can spend, you get some Gen 4 rods and some decent, a decent piston and a cam and some, the stock lifters take abuse. Like it's wild some of the parts you can use and make big power, but there's to a point where this stuff, you shorten the life. It's still a factory OE part. Right. You shorten the life on it. So, you can spend a little bit more money, buy some good lifters, or, you buy like that K1 crank that you guys shoved in the four. Well, it's K1 makes LS crank too, but like cranks like that, or one of our Summit Pro LS crank, there's good. You don't have to spend all the dollars to make big power. You just have to be budget mindful and shop with realistic goals.
Yep. Yeah. 100%.
Absolutely. And again, there's the whole thing with like parts. You have to spend a little bit of money. Everyone, and we want it too. Everyone wants to make 1,000 horse for $1,000 or under, right? Yeah. I wish we could do that, right? And there's on some of the turbo stuff that you do on a junkyard engine, you can do it. You might do it once, but once is a fluke, because eventually it's gonna. It's like, and again, people go into doing stuff like that knowing that I'm totally fine with it. I'm not going to do it. Frankie's not going to do it. But if you want to do it, I'm all for it. And what we like is we like people working on stuff. Anyone who's working on something, no matter how they achieve it, we're all moving the industry forward. That's what makes this industry so healthy, is people working on stuff, people wanting to do things, right? People wanting to build something cool, looking at other people's combinations. And I don't care if it's an LS, it's a small block Chevy, it's a big block Mopar. We like them all. Well, you'll find that we're not very brand specific. We're air pump people, we are engine people. So they all do the same thing. So, I mean, obviously if you have some emotional attachment to something because you had it as a kid, he likes Firebirds, right? Because he had one, right? I like Fairmonts, stuff like that, Fairmonts and Mavericks and crazy stuff like that. But that doesn't make him a Pontiac guy. It doesn't make me a Ford guy, right? Because when we do engines, you take it from a philosophy of here's what it does with the parts, and here's what its capabilities are from a stock standpoint. What can we do to make our whatever power? We want to double the power. We want to make power over a wide RPM range. We want to make it really peaky. We want to use it for drag racing. We want to use it for a mud bogger. Whatever the case may be, you approach it. It sounds like kind of a sterile way of looking at it, but it's a very objective way of looking at it as far as an engine building standpoint, because you have to evaluate what you start with and then figure out what you want to do with it and then pick your parts from there. So to us, that's one of the funnest part of it is creating a combination to do what you want. And because we've built lots of engines, and he's at 24 years old, he has a lot of experience. I wish I had that kind of experience at 24 years old, because, back then, what was I doing at 24? Oh, I was running a machine shop.
Yeah.
I was running a machine shop.
You had that experience.
Maybe I did. I forget. I'm getting old. So, but the fun of it is making things do what you want by design. Yeah. And then there are things that happen fortuitously, like, I didn't think this small cam would work. I didn't think this induction package would do that. Or on the other side of it, oh wow, we sure missed the mark on that. We should have probably did a little bit better, induction on this, or we should have put a bigger header on it. There's always something.
That's just data for your later builds, like Pat was saying before. It's you can take the information you gain from that and apply it to other builds. And like when you're picking out parts combos for an engine, and not every engine has to be a 500 horsepower monster to be nice. Like we'll do mild builds as well that. We spend a little bit of money on them just to make sure that they have durable parts and stuff. But as a street engine or a cruiser engine, it's a really nice engine. It's going to last just as long or longer than the OE would have. It has a little bit more pep, and it didn't take a ton of money, or you didn't have to break the bank to do it. Yeah, it doesn't make 500 or 700 horsepower, but if it's a nice engine, it runs good, and it's enough to move the car around how you want it, then there's nothing wrong with that either.
I'm all for building it the way you want it. I mean, if you look at somebody's build and say they should have done this, they should have done that, and if you build an engine, that's great. If you want to do it, when we're building stuff, we build things the way we want and the way we want it to act. And it's kind of like our 225. You mentioned our 220. That was a really fun engine, by the way. That was an engine that it's a later model slant 6. This thing's 232 inches. Yeah. Now at 11 psi, it makes little bit over 400 horsepower, a little over 500 pound-feet of torque. Would it make more if we push it? Sure it would, but we don't want that. We're not building a Bonneville engine. We're not building a drag race engine. We're not building a NASCAR engine. We're building a fun cruiser engine that's going to run forever and make good power. And that was the goal. So we had a goal of that. We want this thing to make 400 horse. Well, and it did it. If we said we want to make 700 horse, our parts choices and a lot of things would have been drastically different.
Yeah. And in the end, like I said, I was talking about, it's just a nice engine.
Yeah, it's a fun
like
engine.
He said, will run forever. And it was kind of a dream build for us because you could do that build. You could replicate that build in terms of power and, with the platform, you could do that build probably way cheaper than we did it. We kind of said that from the beginning. It wasn't a budget build at all.
You can do that one way cheaper.
But for what we wanted out of it, we wanted an engine that looked good, was extremely just as durable as the original Slant 6 would have been, but at a way higher power level. And we wanted the control of EFI. And so there was obviously a lot of custom stuff that went into that build to make that happen. But you could do a very similar setup with much more budget-minded parts, and you could do like a blow-through carb and all that kind of stuff to maybe bring the cost down a little bit, but still have the same effective power.
That is kind of the cool part about the modern era is, we used to, the Hot Rod magazine was and you read about all sorts of crazy, one of my favorite stories, we did a video earlier this year with the owner of Blueprint Engines. And he, in the showroom there, they have the first engine that Norris Marshall put together.
Oh, wow.
And he kind of, it's a really fun story. And, he built it out of a Hot Rod magazine and, it was the fake, not fake, but you take a 351 bottom end and do some kind of odds and ends to it. And then put, I think either 302 or 302 and maybe put 351 heads on it. I'm not really all that familiar on the Ford. So I'm a big Chevy guy,
It's all right.
The thing I appreciate about you guys is you touched on earlier is, you build Mopars, Fords, all of it, and you get to take all the information you learn from all of them and kind of incorporate it into everything. But anyway, so Norris put this motor together and built it out of a Hot Rod magazine, just kind of, that's the publication he saw. And it was the Foss Boss is what they called it. It's like trying to build it's super cool story. Check out the videos on our YouTube channel. Highly recommend it, guys. But anyway, now we have the internet. And so you can it's the greatest tool when it comes, because more than likely, if you're trying to put together some wild engine combination, someone might have beat you to it, and there's something to be learned and can improve on your process.
Yeah.
So, we have a comment here from Derek. How do you determine how high an engine can rev? And my big joke is whenever the valve springs bind.
I mean,
that's one way to find out, I guess. Usually it's the main limitation for, depends on where you're trying to make power and what you're trying to do it with,
right.
Because it obviously if it's induction limited, you're not going to be turning at a ton of RPM, but really it comes down in terms of when it's going to fail. It comes down to a parts choice standpoint,
right.
Like depending on one of the most highly stressed fasteners in an engine is the rod bolt. So depending on the rod bolt material, the rods themselves, and then all the supporting components around it, like the valve train, the induction, and the camshaft, to make sure that it actually can make power up there. But yeah, it really comes down to a parts standpoint, what you have for parts.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, if you touched on what you're doing with it, if you have a specific power level that you have to make, and the big reason why you turn engines a bunch of RPM is to get air through them. When you have limited displacement, to make the engine move more air, you have to turn it higher. So you have to have more revolutions on the crankshaft at a higher RPM to move enough air through it. So that's one of the factors of RPM. Why would you want to turn at this RPM? Any engine will turn a bunch of RPM under no load, but the whole thing with the rest of it is it's directly related to its application, and application dictates parts choice.
Yeah, like that's the kind of the perfect example there is, one of my many hobbies is like air-cooled Volkswagens, like rail buggies, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
Me and my friends have them. My buddy Benjamin has a motor in his, where it's put together out of everybody's trash cans. It was like, we need a motor and we need a motor now. So it's cobbled together out of like okay parts, and none of us had an aftermarket cam. So it got a stock, 40 horsepower Volkswagen cam.
Mm-hmm.
That motor makes, it makes like 60 pounds of oil pressure. The thing runs like a sewing machine, but it only takes, it's got a giant carburetor on it, and you can hold it wide open because the cam only allows the thing to rev out to $4,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it will never hurt itself. It's just, you hold it wide and let it eat and hope for the best. And that's kind of, just kind of Frankie touched still, kind of port volume and stuff like that can like really affects how high you can rev an engine. You only can shove so much air in something that's naturally gas. Allow what the atmosphere allows it to go into. Now, boosted application's a whole different party.
Yeah, no, that's a whole different realm for sure. So
yeah. So I know you guys said you're not brand specific,
right.
But if each of you had to choose, say I had handed you a blank check and you wanted to build a motor, what would you choose?
What's it for?
Yeah.
It's
so open.
All of a sudden, we're engine guys. We're like, what are we going to use it for?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go drag racing, boys.
Drag racing? Go ahead.
Oh. Well, if it's open, check. I mean, how fast we're trying to go. It's very open ended, I guess, for us. But like we always stress,
obtainable street car. We're getting we're going to Friday night party with my buddies. We're not going Top Fuel racing.
Okay, I mean,
I'd still build an NHRA Pro stock.
Yeah, I'm torn, I guess, because what we always stress is if you're not limited by rules and you want to go fast, you want to make power, you make the engine as big as you can. So the bigger you can make it, the more power it will make.
There is no replacement for displacement.
That's correct.
Yes, that is correct.
People argue that, but they're wrong.
It's just physics. But so I'm torn between building a really big block, but for unique, like if you say you want to build something that was kind of unique and fun, I'd probably do another spin on our Ford 300. We built, if you remember, we built our white turbocharged Ford 300 that we did. And that was one of our favorite projects we've ever done.
Have you seen the internet where the dude is chopping up the LS head and making it fit? That just
And there was I forget which one it was, but one of the drag and drive events, there was a guy running a turbocharged 300, and that's kind of like right on par with what what we think is awesome, because that's again one of our engines that everybody loves, and I would love to do like a more all-out one.
If you had the money to do one all-out,
you need a blank check.
You'd need the blank check because you'd have to build the whole thing basically from scratch. From a strictly unique standpoint, I guess I couldn't disagree with that one.
Yeah, if you wanted to build something that was fun and unique, that would be a good one.
I'd still
it's a super stout engine. Like I think everybody has owned one, an F1, a 5-speed F-150 with a straight 300 in it, and this tons of my friends still drive that old OBS style Ford with a 300 in it, and they're like, this they have a couple 100,000 miles on the clock, and they just go and it's as reliable as the 4L that comes in like the Mopars, those Jeep motor. There's nothing quite like I always joke around. I'm a big off-road guy too, and you'll be out in the woods, just having fun, and at 3 a.m, you listen off in the distance and you just hear a Cherokee just bouncing off the limiter. There's nothing sweeter to me than that sound.
I'd say the 6-cylinder market is very, very popular. So with our 300 and with the 225 with a slant, we've done the 292, did a turbocharged 292 Chevrolet. We did a
4.3.
Yeah, we've done a 4.3 V6. We've done also. We did a Jeep engine of a few years ago. It made that one was very, very popular, and so we might have to revisit that one. We're fans as well of the Jeep stuff, of like I said, straight 6 V6 4-cylinder. It doesn't matter if it burns gasoline, we like it. So everything can go fast as long as you have enough imagination and budget, mostly budget, but you can make anything run good.
Well, and that's the thing is we have to look where this industry started. So I was fortunate enough. I after Hot August Nights this year, I stopped at Bonneville on my way down.
Wow, that's awesome.
We did a cool road trip with we built a 57 Chevy here in Ohio in our studio, drove it to Utah, then to Reno, and then stopped at the Salt Flats on our way back. And we did basically the whole car build in 9 days. It was a lot of fun. But it was wild. It's I've never done anything quite like that, but it was it felt so. I've never felt so American driving across.
Yeah, I bet.
That
sounds like fun.
In a 57 Chevy, just looking out, driving across Utah and Nevada, like this is I couldn't imagine doing this in a covered wagon. But anyway, so we stopped out at Bonneville, and the cool part about Bonneville is, there's all this, the guys there for the top record, but you have all the vintage side of it. So there'll be tons of guys out there, and Hemi powered 3-window, like all sorts of that cool stuff. And you look where hot rodding started in the 50s, with custom, you were grinding stock camcorders, and you were doing all sorts of, they had overhead, those Arden overhead valve heads for flat heads, and just how far the technology has progressed, first gen Chrysler stuff, and to the big Hemis of the second gen Hemis of the later days of the late 60s. It's hot rodding is just the development of horsepower and the pursuit of there's the Hunter S. Thompson quoted, it's faster, faster, faster until the thrill of speed overcomes the fear of death. And I think that's kind of where this whole industry streams from, is the pursuit of speed. And having, and there's nothing more glorious. I try to explain to people that aren't car people what it feels like to go, like you go fast, and that something you built with your own hands and got to do, and there's nothing quite like it. And it is my favorite feeling, and I think that's why I'm always in the pursuit of it.
Yeah, I think that's for a lot of us in the industry. Like a lot of us, whether you're a hobbyist or a professional engine builder, we all kind of start with that same love or that same passion, and then it just permeates throughout the whole industry.
Yeah, and like I said, I kind of mentioned Ed Escuderian earlier. It's guys like him that have just made this, so great for guys like us. They kind of started the industry, and we get to continue it on, and make this great for kids in the future.
Yeah,
absolutely. Again, we can't stress it enough. We want more people to get into this industry. The more people that are interested, the more people are working on things. That just keeps it going, right?
Yeah.
And with there's so much technology coming down, on nowadays with how powertrains are going and all that stuff, from hybrid electric to straight electric to hydrogen fuel, and the things that are very, very exciting. It's some of the older guys, that you got to drag them kicking and screaming into the future on some stuff. I mean, I almost like fuel injection now. I'm this close.
It's almost there. I'm working on
it. I'm a controlled fuel leak guy too. I wish they made I love a screwdriver and a jet kit. Those are my two favorite things. The laptop is cool. I appreciate, I remember the days of you had a prom chip and you were holding taking the tape off. And that was because I'm not even exactly from that era. That's that stuff that's what I could afford at the time. And it was and so you're just burning a prom, take the tape off to burn it. But you're sitting there. It takes about an hour to do what you need to do. Now I'm right on the dyno with the laptop in live time. And
live
adding, or getting out we made a pull, see how it goes, get out, loosen the distributor, give her a couple more degrees. You're using the seat dyno. And now it's I can command how much timing it needs. And I can change it through the RPM range. I remember the first time I used a Sun distributor machine, and I felt like I had discovered fire. I was like, this is old technology, but this is fantastic. This is not me guessing with springs and a piece of paper that somebody wrote down on a notebook, in a notebook.
It's spectacular. The evolution of how good things are. But what I always want people to realize is you have to have the appreciation of how it got there. You have to have the appreciation for the older stuff, because whether it's doing it the old school way or the new school way, the end result is the same, right? You have more controllability with all the modern engine management and all from a timing, from a fueling. You have it's so more advantageous than oh my God, I got to pull a choke to start this thing, right? But in the end, if either one of them are done correctly, they always end up at the same final tally.
Yeah. They'll do the same
they'll
thing.
do the exact same thing.
Yeah. And well, like the way I always usually kind of explain it to people is that a carburetor distributor are extremely easy to install and set up. They take a little bit more time to tune. Fuel injection takes a little bit more time to install and set up, but once it's right, it's extremely quick to tune. So it's either way, but like Pat said, once you have them right, they'll do the same thing.
Right. That's what people, the misconception is one will make more than the other. If they're both right on the same, the combustion chamber and the top of the piston, they don't care where the air fuel mixture came from. They know what the quality of it is, and then when the ignition lights it, that's all it is. So however you get to that point, if everything is where it's supposed to be, they'll make the exact same power.
Yeah, I'm very much like so one of the last, we're coming up on about an hour, guys. This has been absolutely fantastic. I think I could do this for 3 or 4 more hours.
Yeah.
We could too.
So one of my favorite, fuel injection versus carburetors, that kind of deal. I always feel like the mechanic in 2-lane blacktop. I'm like, I'm gonna go check the jets. Like,
yeah.
So that is my final question: is your end all be all car movie? Like, what movie for you can you watch it? So for me, it's 2-lane blacktop. Like I was obsessed with that movie growing up. It started my love. One day I hope to acquire enough money to own a 55 that's primer gray with a big Chevy in it.
Oh, yeah.
It's on my list with a couple stars next to it.
Yep.
But yeah, for you guys, like what's your like end all be all or most iconic movie car? It can be very like it's a large can of worms to open, but yeah, no, I'd love to hear your guys' choices.
Man, well you say 2-lane blacktop's mine as well, because that was one of those things where that was epitomizing back then the hot rodder guys, and even you can throw American Graffiti in there as well for me, and Hollywood Nights. Those are all like really good car movies, right?
American Graffiti's coming up, I believe, on its 50th or 55th anniversary.
Yeah, no, that old Milner, he really sparked some interest in a lot of people, me as well. So
yeah, it's crazy that they can, fun fact for you guys, they listed that car for sale, the Milner's yellow car in the movie for sale after the movie for $1,700, and nobody bought it.
Isn't that something? What about movies for you?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of modern car movies that some are pretty decent, some are kind of extravagant. But I would say that this might be a little biased because I had a Firebird, but Smokey and the Bandit is really one of the movies that really got me into into cars. I mean, we used to, my family used to go to Ocean City for the cruise in the fall and stuff. We used to sit at Burger King and watch the cars go by, and that combined with watching Smokey and the Bandit, I mean, those are the two things that really got me into cars. And obviously I bought a 79 Firebird, so I got as close as I could afford to get to that. But that's one of those movies I think, one of the car movies I could watch over and over again, and it's still good.
I was for sure he was going to say either Fast and Furious or the cartoon cars, because
I'm a big Lightning McQueen fan.
He's going to go for it.
Cartoon Cars has been ripped off a couple times. I will say that.
Smokey and the Bandit's a really great choice. I always love to say we ain't got time for hush puppies like that. But guys, this hour has been absolutely fantastic. So make sure you folks go over and check out these guys from Engine Power. They're always doing some cool stuff, and we can't wait to see how this 440 shakes out on the dyno. And see,
like it.
I know you guys kind of shot for a 700 horsepower goal.
It's right there. It's right behind us.
Look how pretty it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been so much fun, and make sure you guys tune in to see how this thing works, and then tune into the Carcass guys too to see you guys all go road racing and go hit this thing.
Well, it's gonna be fun.
It's like I said, it's been a pleasure. Like I said, I'd love to do this again soon. Maybe after you guys get this in a car and we can talk about how well it went. But this is buttoning it up for us. So thanks again, Frank and Pat. We really appreciate it. I'm Justin with Summit Racing, and it's been a lot of fun. We'll see you guys later.
Thank you.